It's Monday, February 27th, 2012. I'm Rim.
I'm Scott.
And this is Geeknights. Tonight we talk about content filtering and why it never works.
Let's do this. So, something we've talked about many times in the show previously is the jury duty.
Serendipitously, it appears that my old jury nullification thing was the random thing of the day tweet from the past.
At least we still have yet to talk about jury P, but jury duty is good. So, I had jury duties today, which means I didn't go to work, which is, I guess, cool. Even though, the alternative is sitting in a room doing nothing, which is, I guess, equal to work. But I'm kind of actually glad I had this jury duty in Queens, and I managed to get lucky and not have the jury duty in Islip, Long Island, a fucking zillion miles away.
That wouldn't have been that bad. You get out of work the same.
Yeah, but it's like take the Long Island Railroad to the crack ass of dawn to the middle of nowhere. This was take the E train to Kew Gardens, whatever.
Yeah, I'm still sad that in my life I've never served on a jury.
You're never gonna serve a jury. So, I'm all there expecting, I'm like, hey, I'm just going to go in and be 100% honest and see what happens, right? Because I'm figuring, 100% honesty is going to get me sent home.
Yeah.
Right?
See, I have this conflicting problem in that I almost want to act dumber than I am just so I can get on the jury and do some
Exactly.
good.
It's like, maybe I can get some guy acquitted or at least hung on some, non-violent drug charge.
Wait a minute. Acquitted?
Well, I get the
or
jury.
At least hung.
The jury would be hung. The guy would be acquitted. The point is, right, is it's like, so you go in, you sit in the room, then
Yeah, that's how it was for me.
you fill up, some papers. If you have an excuse, you hold on to your papers. If you don't have an excuse, you hand the papers in. It takes like an hour to hand the papers in and then for everyone to go up and try to make their excuses. But actually, it seemed like most of the people making excuses got let go. And they gave a big thing, like these are the valid excuses, these are the not valid excuses. And I guess most of the people heard properly because most of the people were leaving with their valid excuses.
Or the guy handing out the excuse papers was just saying okay to everything.
I don't know about that. They seem like they were pretty strict. Anyway, so then they take a big blob of people, and I learned something. It's called voir dire.
So you didn't know about that already?
I didn't know that word.
Okay, now you know.
Yeah. It was in the
Didn't
was in the really bad instructional video.
Didn't you take like social studies class?
Yeah, but I didn't learn that word.
Didn't you ever watch a crime drama?
Well, like what counts?
I don't know, anything that had like jury selection in it.
12 Angry Men starts after that part.
Yeah, anyway.
Anyway.
Actually, I know all about it partly because I played this old PC game long time ago called Jurisdiction.
Oh, God.
And you had to go through like voir dire.
Don't give me that jurisdiction crap.
And the game was basically the other lawyer would be interrogating someone and you would object to pretty much everything, but you had to know the right objection.
Yeah, you don't see that shit in Phoenix, right?
But you had to know the right objection. There were like 10 objections. It was like a keyboard and like hit the right one.
Yeah, the instructional video is pretty awful. It's supposed to be hosted on the NewYorkJurors.gov website, but there was a 404 if you actually click the link to watch the video.
So how did you watch it?
They just play it on TVs for everyone. The TVs pretty much alternate between either, pretty much when they're not making any announcements, they put it on TV like ABC, and it's annoying. Or when they're trying to talk to you, they switch it over to the DVD, and you just see the DVD menu sitting there quietly while they talk to you. And then they play the video once after all the people who made excuses left. Then after the video, they call a bunch of names, which I assume they picked randomly from the, paperworks. And, those people, they got them together and they said something to them, which I couldn't completely hear being far away from them. And then they took them away. And then an hour later, they did that same thing again. They took a blob of people and they sent them away. And then after they sent those people away, they said, all right, everyone who's left, you're going home. You're not coming back for 4 years. And They said, when we call your name, come up and get your paper and go home. And don't go. They're like, don't go to work. The paper we're giving you says 9 to 5. You don't have to go to work.
See, at least they're
even
cool
though it was
on that
noon.
front.
Yeah.
They pretty much did the same thing for me before.
The thing is, like, if I would have gone into, a thing, right, it's like I would have been completely honest. So
You still wouldn't have served on that jury.
it depends, right? Like if it was a murder trial, what questions were they going to ask? They're going to ask, what's your occupation? I'm a programmer.
Done.
Do you have anything? Maybe. Is there any reason that, you wouldn't be able to judge fairly in a murder trial? Well, no, I could judge fairly in a murder trial, right? By the evidence only and such. And
Wait a minute, by the evidence.
And that would be, they
I am
probably would have put me on.
I am confident that if I answer honestly in any sort of jury selection, I will never serve on an American jury in my entire life.
The thing is, they have to ask the question that you would answer honestly that would get you sent off. And they don't really, I don't get the feeling they don't really ask that many questions.
From what I've read, they'll let you off for a lot of surprising things. Like they don't like, I mean, I don't know if this is necessarily true, but I remember reading a long article talking about how
I still don't know the answer because I didn't.
Women to men. They prefer older people to young people.
Okay.
And stuff like that. They also don't like technologists or scientists or anyone in a technical field of any kind.
That's true.
Yeah.
But, the whole thing is like, I didn't even get to find out if like any of that stuff is going to matter because they sent my ass home.
Yeah, I've never gotten to the point of actually being questioned, too. They let me go the first time. They were like, oh, you work in a hospital? Done. Go home. That was it. And the time before that, I forget why they let me go. I think they just let me go after never calling me, kind of like happened to you.
Yeah, you want to hear a funny story?
Maybe.
So it's not that funny.
I said maybe.
Okay. So, I tell my mom, like, yeah, I got jury duty on Monday, but it's in Kew Gardens. And she's like, oh, I've been there. And I'm like, well, when were you there? You haven't lived in New York in like a zillion years, right? And she's like, oh, you know what it was? I'll tell you exactly when it was. It was pretty much 30 years ago. And they said, she walked in and they said, when are you due? And she said 2 months and they sent her home. So I've been there before, but I don't remember being there before.
I wonder, has it changed much? Because the last time I was called in, not only did I not own a smartphone or a laptop, but I was using my DS Fat.
I thought about bringing a DS. It wasn't necessary. No, pretty much like they have internets there, but it's like the court Wi-Fi. Like it's for the whole court, not just for the jury room. It worked. It was fast. There's a message when you sign into it that says, this internet is completely insecure. Good luck with that. And also, we filtered the porn. And there were some computers lined up in the back, and there were 2 tables with chairs, and the rest of the room, other than that little area with the row of computers and the 2 tables with 4 chairs each, was tons and tons of chairs lined up like the DMV. And then, flat screen TVs hanging on the wall so that no matter where you sat, you could see a TV. And most of the people didn't do anything and just watched the TV. There was maybe 10, 20-ish people who were actually doing things. Like there was a girl who was like, oh, the TV's so annoying. She tried to get let her stay in the hallway so she could read in peace. There was a businessy lady who was laptopping. There were maybe 2 or 3 other people laptopping. There was a tech-savvy cop, actually, who had jury duty. He was pissed. He's like, they made me leave my gun at home and all this bullshit. And he's like, what the fuck is this?
Wow, at home? I remember, actually, when I went to a courthouse in Detroit for unrelated things, they didn't know what to do with my cell phone because that was back when cell phones were bricks, and they weren't really sure if I was allowed to bring it in because the rules were all about walkie-talkies.
Yeah, so the rule was like no cell phones, right? When we first got in there, people were using them, and there was a sign that was like, don't use your phone, and they kept saying like, everyone turn your phone off. If you need it for emergencies, put it on silent or vibrate. If you need to actually use it, which includes texting, emailing, whatever, go outside and then come back in through the metal detectors again. But laptops and tablets and anything that wasn't a phone was perfectly okay.
So wait a minute, I can't use my portable computer because it's too small and phone-like.
But I can use my big portable computer that's exactly identical.
That in fact
has more functionality.
The same communication capabilities and a better camera and microphone built into it.
Yes. The thing is, none of that. I think the reason for that is number one, they just don't want you to annoy the people around you, right?
But I could be just as annoying with my iPad. I could hold it up and use it like a phone over their Wi-Fi.
They might come over and ask you to stop. No one tried that. But they don't want you to be annoying. They don't want like phones ringing and bothering people. And I'm sure that once you go to actual court and you're not just in the jury room, that you're not allowed to have dick.
Oh, of course not. Though
Right.
I would wager, I'll bet there's just some law or some rule that says something vague like no cell phones, but yet, cell phone no longer means anything.
Yeah. No, it was surprised by, like, they had this whole row of computers in the back, like maybe 10 of them. And I'm like, oh man, there's probably going to be people like waiting to use those and such. Maybe 3 of them got used, period, the whole time. No one even really bothered with them at all.
Uh-huh.
And it just, the vast, overwhelming majority of the people there were just sort of doing nothing. Like, at most, they read, like, the free newspaper, like the AM whatnot. And they just sat there staring and sitting until they were let go or taken somewhere. And I was like, man, these people like didn't even bring books or bringing anything. There were people who brought books, but the overwhelming majority, I say a good, like, not just the technology people, subtract, they're talking about the people who did nothing. They didn't bring a thing with them. Over 60% people brought just nothing. They were just sitting there.
Wow, I'm introspective on a regular basis, but I don't just sit there most of the time.
I know.
Eh?
I don't get it.
Anyway, got any news? It is a tech day.
Yeah, so I guess we should talk.
We missed a bunch of stuff.
We missed a zillion things. So the thing I want to talk about the most are these supposed Google glasses, right? So
Yeah.
supposedly, there's a rumor that Google is going to make, glasses that have little, basically heads-up display, and they're also an Android device of some kind. We call this "Shut Up and Take My Money." That's what they call this. All right, I don't care if it's first gen. I don't care if it sucks. I don't care if it ruins your eyesight because my eyesight's perfect. I can afford to lose some. I'll still be better off than Rim, and that's all there is to it.
Yeah, I guess I'm at the point where I've been waiting for this my entire life.
There's like between $250 and $600. Yeah, I could pay that.
Yeah.
It'll have 3G or 4G. You'll have to pay monthly. I don't care. I could pay for that.
Yeah, I'm pretty much ready to gargoyle it up. All I want is I want to overlay names over people's heads when I'm walking around and get basic data about stuff.
And have a camera that's just always cameraing.
I really want the camera that's always
They say
cameraing.
that this, I've read some stuff, and, if these rumors are true, right? For example, it'll make sure that people know when you're photoing them, but I'll be like,
Yeah.
poking that LED out with a pin so fast.
Yeah,
Cutting the wires on that speaker so no one hears me go.
My old cell phone actually had a thing where if you took a picture, it would play a sound, and you could change the sound, but you could not disable it. So I uploaded an empty WAV file, and that was my sound.
Yep.
I also put tape over the little light.
Yep. So,
There's only one camera I own where I want the little light, and that's the GoPro, because it has lights on like 3 surfaces, so I can tell if it's still working.
Yeah, there's no way to know because it doesn't have any other information on
Yeah.
it if it's working or not.
But after having seen videos of myself skiing, because I wore like the chest mount, I was skiing around with it, I really want there to be, I want to have like the last 48 hours of video of my entire life just available all the time.
Why last 48? I say last all the hours since I was born.
The thing is, I'd have
including
to
being
archive
born.
all that.
I also want video of every person that has ever lived throughout all of history.
in
through
the
all
very
time.
least,
From Caesar to the medieval peasant.
so you'll get to see Cleopatra doing the nasty.
Oh, shit, son. You know how much you can sell that shit for?
No, 0, because everyone will have that video.
Dude, every porn site about a business, just be watching that shit over and over again. Oh, you know what? Fuck that. You know what, Rim? You can have all the Cleopatra doing the nasties. I'm taking all the Helen of Troy doing the nasties. That's right.
But I only need the last 48 hours because the majority
Well,
of...
I mean, you're never, by the time you watch 48 hours of Cleopatra doing the nasty, I'm sure she did it, combined in her life longer than 48 hours.
If I've learned one thing from video
you
production...
could pretty much go back to hour number 1 and you won't remember it.
It's that every, 10 hours of video I get makes maybe 1 minute of interesting content.
Well, I mean, like, you watch Running Man, they filmed that shit for like 2 days and managed to boil it down to like a 90-minute show.
Yep.
You don't see anything that they edit out so much crap.
So I found an article about your jury duty thing on why they allowed cell phones specifically in and why they tell people not to use them. They wanted to keep them banned. They don't want people to have cell phones only because the cell phones all have cameras in them. The reason they lifted the ban is because they had to confiscate 400 phones a day during jury duty because every single person who came in had a cell phone or 2.
There was a guy with 2 iPhones.
Hey, I used to carry a BlackBerry and my phone back in the day.
So the other thing is, the corollary to this Google Glasses rumor is the slightly less reliable rumor. Neither one is super reliable, but anyway, is the Apple Watch. And it's like, well, shut up and take my money again.
Yep, I'll wear the watch and the goggles.
Right? It's like, dude, that's nothing I want more, right? It's like, I don't like watches because they're useless. It's like, I'll just look at my phone to see what time it is.
Yeah, the only time I ever wear a watch is skiing because I don't want to take my expensive cell phone out in the middle of a blizzard.
Right. But there's already this Android watch that kind of sucks, but it sort of has the features I'm looking for, which is, want to know what time it is? Look at the watch. Well, all watches do that, right? But it's like, got an email. Your phone goes ding, and you look at your watch, and you see what email it was. Or there's tweets, and you just go ding, and you look at the watch, and all the notifications and all that are on the watch. Or, oh, I want to start playing music now. Push some buttons on the watch and not have to get the phone out of your
Now,
pocket.
people have made things like this for a long time. They just all really suck.
Yeah, but the rumor is Apple is making one. And
So, Scott, here's the conundrum.
Which means it'll work so nicely with the iPhone.
Apple will have the nice watch. Google will have the nice goggle.
The thing is, from what I can tell based on these rumors, the goggles will go standalone. The watch will work with the iPhone. So I'll have an iPhone, an iWatch, and Google goggles.
Yeah, we'll see if there's some sort of droid hackish solution to the watch.
What are the odds that Apple is going to make the iWatch work with an Android phone? 0. The negative a zillion, right? What are the odds that, Google will make some app for the iPhone that the goggles might communicate with it? Better than the odds that reverse, right? I mean, greater than 0, maybe 10%, 20. Google puts all their stuff. You have Google Voice in the iPhone. They don't care, right? So, the iPhone, iWatch, Google goggles combination is, I'm looking forward to it. And they say these rumors are like within the year, and I'm like, oh.
The thing is,
so I'm saving, I'm basically keeping all the monies in the bank account.
There's a lot I could say about this, but we've talked about augmented reality and heads-up displays and all that before. So instead, I just want to point out again, every time nerds talk about stuff like this, it seems like the majority of the comments are the armchair scientists making, kind of obvious attacks like, oh, well,
play gods.
No, more like, oh, what about people who have prescription problems? Like, will it work with that? Or like, oh, this wouldn't work.
It's generation 1. What about blind people?
No, they basically
they can't use the watch
every time there's technology
or the
news,
goggles.
A lot of people seem to make kind of the obvious arguments against the thing, never having even considered the possibility that the engineers who designed it thought of the same thing that they thought of and might have already come up with a solution to said thing. I mean, the prescription problem, what's the demographic of Google goggles? If anything, it'll only work for people who need a prescription to start.
There's probably just going to be an adjustable knob or setting.
But anyway, and much more, I don't want to say sinister news yet, we had a big argument in the forum about this, and I forgot we didn't actually talk about it on the show, but the other big tech news was that with OS X Mountain Lion comes an updated Gatekeeper.
Oh, we told you. Well, the new thing. It's called Gatekeeper.
Yeah.
Oh, gee, we didn't see this coming 100 years ago, except we totally did.
So if you're unaware, Gatekeeper, which will be there by default, will prevent you from installing anything that didn't come certified through the Mac App Store.
Right. It's basically the same as it's similar to what Windows does with drivers, right? If the driver has been signed by Microsoft, which means, like the NVIDIA driver is signed by Microsoft, right? Microsoft says, yup, that driver is legit. So when you install it, it installs nicely.
But
if you go to some shady site,
yeah, my crazy like ghetto Russian DV whatever decoder device that needs some weird ass driver.
Windows pops up this message that's like, whoa, dude, warning, you're about to install some fucked up shit. Click yes to install the fucked up shit, or push the big no button to stay safe.
But that click yes is still there. And the one thing I can say about Microsoft, love them or hate them, is that will never go away.
Yeah.
At least not in the foreseeable future.
That's right.
So, basically, right now there's still a way around this. You can turn that off and install whatever you want on a Mac. I will bet you, and in fact, I already bet good money
but
with
Windows
someone.
is just doing it for drivers. Apple is doing it for all software. Anything you want to install, period, will have this yes-no warning thing when you install it.
I've talked about this before. We've talked about it. We'll talk about it again. The walled garden, not to be alarmist, not to make a slippery slope argument, just saying it is a very dangerous precedent. And it's something you need to be wary of, because look at already the walled garden on HTPCs and content online. Any device that has apps like the Xbox or the PlayStation 3 or Boxy now, the apps that are available don't give you the same functionality as just using a regular computer. YouTube apps don't show the same content. Like straight up, content's invisible on the Xbox that you can see just fine on a web browser. Hulu blocks content from phones and from, apps that I can just see fine on a web browser. They seem to think that I can't plug a normal computer into my TV.
Yeah, this is the whole thing, right? It's like, it's the approved, when you have this closed ecosystem, right, where only the approved apps get in, it means that now you can't, it's like you can't just write apps that do whatever you want. If your app does, certain apps with certain features will not be allowed, period.
All right, well, let's see. Will they allow a BitTorrent app?
Maybe, maybe not.
Would they allow a sort of waste-like app?
Almost definitely not.
Yeah. Would they allow an iTunes competitor? So
who knows?
We can get around this now, but I've actually bet a reasonable sum of money that within 3 years of the date we talked about this, which was a few days ago, I think it was last week, Apple's going to remove the option to be able to install stuff that isn't in their app store.
It's either going to be, what's going to happen is either the next animal or the animal after that in terms of OS X, right? They're either going to merge OS X and iOS into the same thing, in which case, it'll be App Store will be the only way to get software onto it without, jailbreaking, right? Because you can always jailbreak. Or just they're still going to have the separation, but OS X is pretty much going to remove that yes button, and you'll only be able to install things that Apple wants you to and nothing else.
So I'm going to go one step further. I mean, I think, yes, within 3 years, that option will go away. I think Apple platforms will not allow you to install
It's funny. I guarantee, you know what else? I got another prediction, right? You notice how the Apple fanboys, they're like, well, it's still okay because you can still click yes, right? They're like, oh, Apple would never remove that yes. But then you'll see when they do remove the yes, the Apple fanboys are going to be like, oh, it's better that way. Your computer's totally safe. It's not like it's like they'll keep shifting their position to whatever Apple does.
In some ways, it could be better on certain kinds of platforms. Like, it doesn't bother me nearly as much on the iPhone because the phone is a more purpose-built device and I have alternatives. But
yeah, it's weird. Like, people jailbreak their phone and I don't, just, because I want my phone to work and I don't want to have to, fiddle around with it or futz with it, or if it fails, or that would suck balls, But I do still feel in principle that I should be able to install whatever I want in there. But I'm willing to give that up for the phone that actually works. And the thing is, all those things that I could do by jailbreaking, I just really don't want to do. If I did want to do them, well, I'd jailbreak or get an Android phone or who knows what I,
But a computer's
But
different.
I just don't want to do those things.
Now, there is a place for application-like computing devices, like certain kinds of tablets and Xboxes and things, and that doesn't really bother me. What bothers me is that the computer itself, at its fundamental core, is a general-purpose device in the hands of the person who's using it. If you don't have full control over it, it's a different kind of device.
Yep.
And I don't think Apple is actually going to continue to sell computers in the long run.
Well,
I think they're going to straight
need...
up drop the idea of a Mac.
Well, they still need to have something for people to create the software, to make apps on. You won't be able to make an iPad app on an iPad, right?
Yeah.
But maybe they'll have Xcode for iPad with, and attach the keyboard to it kind of situation.
No, I think instead, in the long run, they'll probably have a Windows and or Linux application to do that.
They might get rid of like the it's like, I don't know what they'll do.
Or they could sell they could sell Macs that are designed specifically to develop on other Apple stuff with a bunch of hardware.
They have like the Pro only.
Yeah, but I honestly, because look at the money they make. All the money Apple makes is in these purpose-built devices, and already, I mean, what do people use Macs for? It's a lot of the kind of creative stuff that Windows has equal offerings on, and some of the big players there, like Adobe, seems to be trying to drop Apple support as much as humanly possible.
Yeah, and the only creative stuff really that Apple has left that no one else has is Final Cut and Pro Tools, right? Those are pretty much the two big ones.
And honestly, as an audio engineer, I really don't like Pro Tools. I've used it a lot. I've used it in studios, and I find it relatively inferior to other offerings. Now, I can't say Final Cut Pro because I kind of wish I could use Final Cut Pro, fucking Premiere, but that's neither here nor there.
But, you can't have this whole hardware platform just for Final Cut. That would be weird.
That while Apple laptops are selling pretty well, I think that the iPad and the equivalent are doing a huge dent into MacBook sales, and I think that the desktop Apple PC will disappear within 5 years, and I think the Apple laptop will disappear within 10, if not sooner.
Well, we'll
I think
see.
they'll all be replaced by various app-driven things like the iPad.
Well, definitely the consumer market, right? There's going to be a lot less laptoping and a lot more, tableting and, phoning.
Yeah.
I mean, look at how many people, even just, 3 or 4 years ago in that jury room, you would have seen a lot more laptops. But now a lot of the people, they weren't untechnological. They were just cell phone, tablet only, no laptop.
I used to
And it
carry
was
my
only-
laptop everywhere.
Yeah, the only people who were really laptopping was me, the developer, and this one really businessy lady. And that was pretty much it. The other, most of the other people were non-laptopping for, maybe I think 2 people whipped some out for like 5 minutes and then put them away. And that was it.
Now, I'm not saying this is the end of general purpose computing because, we have other options. I just think Apple is going to go for this demographic, and thus to make public my bet on February 16th, 2015, if Apple has not removed the option from the OS to disable the Gatekeeper and let you install your own stuff, then I get $100.
Yeah, the other thing to consider here, right, is like the business aspect of this, right? Is like you make some software, and Apple, the OS X has this, different culture than Windows and Linux, where people on Macs, for some reason, even if it's not in an app store, they buy software. Like everyone at work on all these Mac users are like paying for text editors. I'm like, what the fuck is wrong with you, right? It's that's just what they do. Is Mac people pay for software?
Well, because Apple has a very, they push this app store and they've it's almost like.
But I mean, just like independent Apple, software developers who make software for the Mac. Like, try to sell it.
Now, I'm not saying it's premeditated
And
because
there's a
that would be
lot-
one fuck of a conspiracy, and it's not. But I think it just kind of worked out this way that, look, they've got a culture of people who are used to that, which might have been due to the physical design of how you install stuff. You drag the icon out of the DMG or whatever. It feels like you're taking like this monolithic app and kind of putting it there.
Right.
But Apple, by then monetizing this with their own app store, basically it stands to make money for all the development that other people do to plug holes in their system. For example, Macs don't really support gamepads for crap, so you have to buy an app to make that work. The idea of doing that on a Windows PC or a Linux PC is laughable.
Right. It's just, of course they work.
That's basic functionality.
It just works.
You plug any input device into a Windows PC, it detects it as something,
I know, right?
and you can use it.
That's right.
Granted, PC gamers are starting to go down that road with their stupid Joy-to-Key.
Right, but Joy-to-Key, at least, shady as it is free.
Yep.
It's not something you pay for, right? So, but it's weird because like now you're going to get, all these companies that do make, for pay Mac apps. A lot of them are going to get shut out because right now, imagine you go to a site and you download some shady software for free and you try to install it and it says, warning, this isn't legit, and you click OK. Well, that's sort of what you expect. Imagine you go to a site and, for Adium, which is free, but, something else that you maybe paid $10 for. You paid $10 for this text editor. That's totally legit, but it wasn't in the App Store. And then you try to install it on your Mac, and it's like, warning, and you're like, what? This is a legit app I just paid $10 for. Did I just get ripped off? Even with the yes, no still as available choices, suddenly it looks really bad for those for pay, independent Mac software developers.
But at the same time,
and it's
it
like,
gives
and
them more
this
control.
yes, no dialogue box looks really scary.
At the same time, it helps them out. If they buy into the Apple stuff, they become legit. They go through Apple's channels.
And then Apple takes a huge cut of the money.
It's not that big of a cut.
It's
and also,
gigantic.
Apple
Microsoft
provides,
doesn't take anything.
with a
if you
lockdown
make
platform,
Windows software.
Apple provides a pretty consistent DRM platform and everything they need to make their money.
They're also, right, what part of this is that there's going to be some APIs in OS X that you won't be able to access at all unless you're an approved app. So if you want, certain thing to, do certain things in the system, well, only apps that are in the App Store can do those things. And your app that was downloaded from an independent place on the internet, no matter how legitimate it is, can't do those things. So it's like, oh, you want to make software that, for example, accesses the printing. I'm just making something up here. Printing API. Oh, nope. No, only programs that are in the App Store can print. All the other ones can't. Printing won't work unless it's like then it's like forcing people to go into the App Store. It doesn't matter if the yes is there because no app that's, even worth a shit you will be available even with the yes. It's like, oh great, I clicked yes to install my word processor that Apple doesn't like and it can't print.
So if you disagree that this will happen, one, Apple has a long history of doing this sort of thing. There's precedent in both the iPhone and the iPad.
Yeah, I don't know why though. Like you'd think Steve Jobs dying and whatever. The people who are still at Apple also believe in this. It's like there has to be in Apple's giant company. There have to be people who don't believe in this somewhere, right? These are technologically intelligent people. All of them really like these ideas,
Well, Scott, remember, you're thinking about this from a philosophical and a user experience perspective, where a corporation, you think about it from the aspect that this directly will make Apple more money both now and in the long run. I think for the company, it's a great idea, even though I think for me and for a lot of users, it's a terrible idea.
To make more money, but it's like, the people who work there are like going along with this making more money. They have, at least the one thing I noticed though that was recent news with Apple is that, Apple has tons of cash. I'm not talking about just, of course, every company has a lot of money, right? But Apple has a lot of cash, as in plain old paper dollars sitting in the bank.
So does Google. Either one of these companies could do something crazy like buy the entire recording industry of the world.
But Apple has a ludicrous billions and billions of dollars just in cash sitting there. They could just give the money to all the employees and everyone call it a day and go home, which is what I would do. But so they have all this cash, and the reason they have so much cash is that Steve Jobs actually, from his experience in the olden days getting screwed over, right, was like, you can never have too much cash, because what if suddenly the whole world changes and you need to catch up and you're getting screwed? You might need to build a new factory tomorrow that builds a certain thing, or who knows what. You never know. It can't hurt. So he loved to have tons of cash, and the people at Apple now, is big news that one of them actually said, yeah, I think we have too much cash. We need to spend some of it. But I wonder what they're going to, it's like, well, if you have too much cash, you need to spend some of it. Maybe you could lower your margins, right? On your overpriced crap.
But two, Apple straight up, they'll make money doing this by being the only legitimate channel to sell apps. They can make money off of the so-called shareware market. There's an existing app market in Apple. They're just going to take the whole thing over. Play by their ball, or you don't get any money. You have no access to their platform.
Yep.
And they work pretty heavily with the media producers who themselves and the distributors really, really want apps. They really want to be able to lock everything down. A YouTube app, you can't just block the ads.
Yep.
A College Humor app, you can only show the things that are originals and make the money from, your content without having to do content sharing deals or anything. You can prevent people from seeing stuff that isn't profitable to you.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's going to happen. I bet money on it, and we'll see.
That's why, I guess, people, only the open source cool people have really appreciated the fact that, thank God Linux exists, right? But, we've appreciated it since, decades ago. But
Hell,
give it 5-10 years.
The day I became afraid of it,
you'll see a lot of people who'll be really happy. They'll be like, oh, man, am I glad that Linux thing exists? Why did I make fun of all those neckbeards for all these years?
Maybe it's just because the
I've got no
CBDTPA
choice,
came.
because if I use Windows or OS X, you can't even, there's no video, you can't install a video player to watch any kind of video, but in
The
Linux,
thing is,
you
Scott,
still
this
got
is cycles.
M-Player.
This happened before. Remember back in the day, your parents would come and say, hey, how come I can't do X? And you'd install some software that they didn't know about that let them do stuff. Usually that X was, how do I pirate movies like I see everybody doing?
That's right.
So it'll be the same thing. Grandma will come to the nerd and ask, why can't I install my whatever? And the nerd will say, oh, here, and unclick it, and it'll be good. And then when that goes away, Grandma might say, fuck it, and go to Linux. Probably not, but some grandmas will.
No, I think that, they'll just be sort of, the closed app world will just be, it'll just work, and it'll have enough, content that the people who don't want to pull and they just, don't mind being pushed on, won't even care and won't even want for anything else. But all the smart people will use something else. So then it'll actually be kind of nice. It'll be sort of like reverse hash Wednesday. You could just be like, oh, yep, there's someone using, oh my God, hey, that guy's using Windows. That's a smart person. Let's get together, guys.
It's kind of just like.
But it'll also be easy. It'll also be easy for the government to just be like, "Oh, there's a dude running Linux." Yeah.
Think of the old spinsters who grew up during the Great Depression, and they hoard money like under their mattress because they were burned before. I guess Steve Jobs was kind of doing that. Maybe it's just because we grew up during the early days of the internet with the, the modern internet with the EFF Blue Ribbon campaign and the CBD TPA. And there have been so many assaults on our basic right to use our computers that we're kind of extra paranoid. I mean, Oracle and Ellison and all these people, there is a long history of people trying to actually straight up make it illegal to have a general purpose computing
That's
device.
all right, because as pessimistic as I am about 5-10 years out, I'm actually pretty optimistic about 20-30 years out.
Yeah, well, I have my Google goggles.
That's right.
Yeah. But anyway, things of the day.
I had a hard time finding anything today.
I have so many things of the day queued up, it's ridiculous.
You want to send some this way?
I got a couple, but I'm gonna use this one. So there is a huge nerd debate that's been going on for a long time now, because you might all recall that when you were a kid and your parents showed you Star Wars, you really, really, really wanted more of it, and there wasn't any more.
Well,
And then
that's
one
sort
day,
of like how you detect the nerdy kid.
and then one day, you saw in the news that they were making the 3 prequels. I think I was more excited about that than I'd been about most things I'd ever been excited about in my entire life.
The thing is, like, I wasn't actually that excited. I mean, I still waited in a big long line to buy a ticket on the right day and but it wasn't like, going crazy.
Well, you never go crazy about anything except Korean variety shows. But anyway, and ponies. So, as we all know, episode 1 was pretty shit. And
No.
2 and 3 were kind of better, but we had this problem now.
Better than shit. But that
More
doesn't mean
people
good.
continue to be born. Those people have not already seen Star Wars. And in fact, if you scoff at this idea, go to an anime con. Because years ago, like 4 years ago, we were at an anime con. There were like 500-600 people in the audience. And we asked how many people hadn't seen Cowboy Bebop. And like half the audience raises their hand. And the rest of the audience is like,
Gasps.
What the fuck? So Scott says, are you kidding? Who here has never seen Star Wars? And almost half the audience raised their hands.
It wasn't almost half, but it was
was
a
almost half.
scarily large number of people. Do it, you'll see. A scarily large percentage of the population has never seen any Star Wars. Like you would think every single human being in the in a civilized place in the world who is above the age of 0 has seen it, right? Nope, not the case.
Now, in the old days, the answer would be, all right, let's watch Star Wars. Now the answer is, well, there are 6 Star Wars movies in 2 different orders.
Well, just watch 4, 5, 6 and just pretend 1, 2, 3 don't exist entirely.
But what if you want to watch them? Or what if you want, they're going to ask, a kid's going to ask, aren't there 3 more Star Wars movies? And you can't hide that from them
Well, it's
forever.
like once you've seen 4, 5, 6, you have the proper context and knowledge. You can just watch 1, 2, 3 whenever and take them for what they're worth.
Scott, it was like
It's
when I was a kid and I got Final Fantasy 1, Final Fantasy 2, Final Fantasy 3, and then there was Final Fantasy 7. I was like, what the fuck? What's going on over there in Japan? And then I found this whole magical mystery land. So there are many nerd arguments as to what the best order is to show people. And there are valid points to be made. This is a pretty good argument to have. It'll really test your chops on, like film narrative and everything. Because, for example, you might think, oh, just watch them chronologically. Duh.
No.
That spoils, episodes 5, the big cliffhanger and the big, like, oh my God, he's my father thing, really loses its punch if you've got 3 movies beating it into your head, though, and then it just comes to this later. Yeah. But
I
at the
mean,
same time,
the thing is, right?
if you watch 4, 5, 6,
the thing is, I still don't believe in spoilers, right? I mean, I can watch episode 5 now, and when he's like, "I am your father," works every time. Doesn't matter that I know. In fact, it works better that I do know. So
Nah.
I don't really buy that.
I buy it.
It doesn't work on you? Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that certain moments, like in Cowboy Bebop, there's a death that comes out of nowhere, and it's kind of a pointless death.
Still works every time.
I think
doesn't
it works
matter
better
doesn't matter
if you
that
don't
I
see
know.
it coming.
In
Because you're not
fact, it
prepared
worked
for
better the most recent time I've watched it than it did the first time.
I don't think you're able to make that judgment because you can't fully know the state of mind you were in the previous time.
Based on memory.
Yeah, memory. Who are the water bearers?
Of Indara.
What happens when they spill their water?
They wet their pants.
So there are many arguments back and forth, and someone introduced perhaps the best recommendation I've ever seen, and it is extremely well reasoned. And furthermore, he has experimental data because he found an adult who had not seen any Star Wars and tried this order on them. and it worked well. The order is, and I'll go through this very specifically, and I won't talk about why because you can read his long, detailed, excruciatingly well put together description. You watch episode 4, then episode 5, then 2, then 3, then 6. And if you say, what about 1? Fuck 1. It's the Machete Order. You don't watch episode 1.
Well, he also says you could watch 1 way later if you really wanted to. But
yeah, you gotta watch 1 like on your deathbed just to remind yourself that we live in a cruel and uncaring world.
I mean, I read this thing. Guy's got good logic, right, and such. But he's got the good ideas.
Well,
and
he makes a really good point.
He
that
does make the
one
really
is
good
not
points
tied to the rest of the movies at all.
He did, right? He does make really good points, but the thing is, I still stand with something that people just aren't getting, which is that, like, look, you've seen them all, right? I've seen them all, and we sort of have this context. We understand, right? This is good, this is bad, whatever, right? And you think that someone who hasn't seen them before isn't going to reach the point that we are at and understanding and putting the movies in context?
My experience has been that many people don't.
I don't know. I think that if you watch the movies, you'll come to understand them as we understand them. So you just watch 4, 5, 6, and then later, if you want, watch 1, 2, 3, whatever, and you'll come to the same understanding of those 6 movies that all of us have.
No, Scott,
and it doesn't really matter
to everything.
What do you mean?
My argument
I make this argument to everything. What else do I make this argument
Scott,
to?
The point I'm making is that
wait! I'm playing the rim game. What else do I make this argument to?
Pretty much.
Name a specific instance.
So, fair listeners, outside of the context of Geeknights, pretty much any show idea, anything we ever talk about, Scott's answer is, who cares? Do whatever.
You need to still have a specific
instance. The only 2
instance.
things he's ever been excited about are My Little Pony,
specific instance,
and Running Man.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. So the only things I happen to like in the past week are things I've liked for my whole life. I never liked anything else in my whole life.
My argument is that why not? Just because something works okay, why not put a little effort into it? If someone's into cinema, this is actually a very interesting way to watch the trilogy that probably might elicit different reactions. I think it enhances the experience at least a little bit. Why not try to optimize your life?
You're not really. It's not that important.
I think it is. The argument he makes about the parallelism and how 4, 5, and 2, 3.
It's interesting to read this thing. And you know what? Anyone who has seen all the movies multiple times, like we have, except, I've even seen 1 multiple times.
I've only seen 1 once, and I actually am never going to watch it again.
I'm not going to watch it again, but that's just how life goes, But it's like, well, then read this article and say, oh, yeah, this guy's pretty clever, and you'll get the same exact experience we have. Watch all the movies a whole bunch of times. It's like some people, they ascribe...
No, don't watch episode 1 a whole bunch of times.
I'm just saying, people ascribe this sort of magical mystique to, like, the first time you watch it has to be... It's like, no, you're going to end up just like everyone else watching these movies many times and understanding them as a whole.
So, Scott, here's an example.
And you'll be just like every other nerd. It's not this unchanging, like, it's not like you're chiseling it into stone. The first time you watch it, it's in stone, it can never be changed.
So, Scott, what if the first time you watch Citizen Kane, like, let's just re-edit Citizen Kane to where you get it's his sled in the movie at the beginning instead of at the end? Does that change the movie at all? Are you saying there is literally 0 impact on one's experience on the first watching?
You're changing the whole movie. That's a different argument.
No, I'm not. I'm moving one revelation.
No, this is about
to the beginning.
This is about not the order of multiple movies. We're talking about one movie as a concrete element.
Scott, but this is one story.
What if I take the Mona Lisa and I put a nose down in her dress? It's
different.
It's not, I looked at the Mona Lisa before I looked at the Van Gogh sunflowers. Now it's totally different.
But those aren't part of a narrative, Mr. Everything's black and white. There's no possibility in the world for nuance of any kind.
Right.
Anyway.
It doesn't matter.
I recommend, if you're going to watch the trilogy again, to watch it in this order. Because I think, here's my real reason. If you don't do it this way, episode 1 just pisses you off. And episodes 2 and 3 really fall flat. I think this is kind of like cleansing your palate before eating something to make it taste a little bit better. More correctly, it's like putting a whole bunch of sugar on some medicine so it doesn't taste like shit when you eat it.
I recommend you do what I do. Just watch 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6, 4, 5, 6. And then watch 4, 5, 6 again and pretend 1, 2, 3 don't exist.
My order is more...
Why would you eat shit just because you put some cinnamon on the shit? It's still shit. Just don't even eat that.
2's not that bad if you cut out most of
3
it.
3 is the least bad of all of them.
3's okay if you also cut out most of it.
It's still poop. Don't eat it. Why do you have to watch it? It's like, be like, just because it has some Star Wars logo on it just means you have to watch it? Are you watching like all those like Clone Wars, things? I mean,
So,
the Cartoon Network one's okay, but
the article actually makes a nice point about that. About how the conflict of Luke might be turning dark or going toward the dark side barely exists in the original trilogy, but kind of comes out if you watch it in this order.
what do you mean? It's so much in the original. In Return of the Jedi is all about, and the second half of Empire, that's all about Luke turning to the dark side.
Yeah, but it's a little ham-fisted, and it doesn't really play, like, it doesn't ring true the whole time.
What do you mean when he goes in the cave?
Oh, and he meets Darth Vader,
And then he cuts
but
the
it's
mask off.
actually
It's
him
himself.
under the mask. Oh my God, the fist ham came out and ham-fisted me.
Right, but it's like, you're like, oh, it's barely in it. It's like,
I didn't say it's barely
you
in.
said
I
it's
said
barely in the original.
I said it barely rings true.
How about in the opening of Return of the Jedi?
Yeah. Most people I found don't actually kind of notice that hint that
You
is
know how
talked
you
about.
notice it? Do what I say. Just watch it a whole bunch of times.
Or watch the
And then anytime somebody says, you will be destroyed, you'd be like, oh.
Anyway, got a thing of
Anyone
the day?
wearing a black hood.
You got a thing of the day? Captain
Right.
thing of the day?
Yeah, it's an okay thing today. I couldn't find anything so good. So this guy, it's an Etsy store called Nerd House, NIRDHAUS, and the reason the nerd has an I is because he's making a pun on birdhouse. This dude makes birdhouses, and it seems also Christmas ornaments, but mostly birdhouses, and he makes them nerdy. They're hand painted, and he's got, let's see, speaking of Star Wars, he's got two droids.
Not bad.
He's got a Bob-omb ornament. He's got Mario, Luigi, Toad, birdhouses, and the best, the hand-painted Bullet Bill small birdhouse. Check that out.
That's pretty good.
Check it out. But yeah, nerdy birdhouses. Good call, dude.
Not bad.
That is a craft, right? That
The thing is, Scott,
I have not seen combined with nerdery yet.
what order should I look at the birdhouses in?
It doesn't fucking matter.
So
You
in the
can
meta
see them
moment,
all at once. It's a photo gallery.
In the meta moment, we are going to be at the Penny Arcade Expo over Easter weekend. We are doing
It's
a
Penny
panel.
Arcade Expo East.
Yes, we are doing
2012.
one lecture, one main lecture, a Let's Play money-making game. We are doing a classroom-style tabletop workshop, 2 hours long, title to be announced. We are also going to be at Anime Boston to do Diamonds in the Rough, which is a retitling of Cover Your Bases, which itself is a retitling of Anime You Never Thought You'd Like, which itself is a retitling of Anime You Should See.
The throwaway panel that
think it's a good
people
panel.
come to all the time in droves.
Because people don't know what to watch.
No, they
and
don't.
then we need to tell them what order to watch Star Wars in.
Well, because unlike, say, PAX, right, where it's the same people over and over again, the anime cons, you get this sort of turnover. You get the new fan comes in, the old fan goes out. So,
I wonder why. Maybe we've talked about that. But anyway, that's it.
is there any other metas?
Nah, not really. Go to our YouTube channel. I got some more. I found a bunch of old video that I never did anything with from PAX East 2011. So I'm putting up a PAX East 2012 preparation montage to get you ready, if you've never been to PAX East, for what PAX East is truly like.
Okay.
Has such hits as The Cavernous Venue. I forgot how big Secret Tabletop was. As in, bigger than MagFest. So, all right, we went on Star Wars for a while, but filtering the internet doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. I mean, what is there to say about this? So some people, for whatever reason, have a computer, and they don't want people on that computer looking at certain things
Now,
that
the thing
come
is,
from the internet.
it usually comes down to don't let people look at porn, which the real question I have here, and this is what we were discussing before we did the show, why are so many people trying to look at porn on every internet connection they get their grubby little hands on?
Right. I mean, like,
Why is this such a problem? I was at IBM, right? Years ago, a decade ago, and more than once, factory workers broke into labs by jimmying open the doors to look at porn on the PCs in those labs that weren't filtered.
I was at the RIT
Who
library
does that?
once, in little QB areas where they had computers in the...
Oh, you mean the nap rooms?
Right. And, I'm just sitting there computing, doing actual work, and this dude behind me, I just happen to notice he's looking at porn. He's not whacking it in the library, but he's trying to hide it too. Like, he's minimizing it, looking around his shoulder, opening it again. It's like, why are you looking at prawn in the library? Can't you just look at it somewhere? Maybe that's your thing. It's sort of like, you're one of those people, like, you get off on the fact that it's in public.
But, like, why are so many, like, businessmen get caught all the time with porn on their laptops and porn on their office PCs? Do you know how many people, I did the filtering for part of IBM. How many factory workers just constantly tried to find porn? Like, they went for porn more than anything.
It's like, why? I mean, not to say I never look at porn ever, but I don't look at porn in public or constantly. It's like, come on.
I mean, I've read a bunch of articles
Everyone
actually
looks at
recently
porn
talking
at some
about
point.
how much of a problem people just looking at porn on their iPads on planes has been lately.
Yeah, it's like,
and
what?
in airports.
It's like, why would you even want to? Why does it need to be blocked?
I mean, all right, so worst case, all right, so let's say I'm a businessman. I really want to get my porn on. So I'm
in your hotel room, dude.
So I'm on a plane.
That's what hotel rooms are for. They even sell porn in hotel rooms.
So I'm on a plane.
Specifically for that purpose.
And I open up my, like, mulatto butts folder, and I'm looking through. And all right, great. Now I've got a raging erection and no way to do anything about that
You
without
can join
getting
if
arrested.
you're on a plane, maybe there's someone with you. You can go to the Mile High Club in the bathroom or
That
something.
doesn't work. If you've been in, that doesn't actually work.
I'm just trying to say, like, look, that's how crazy it is. That's, and even then, if you had someone to join the Mile High Club with, what do you need the porn for?
Now, I do understand why, like, schools try to filter because, like in elementary school, they'd rather avoid the problem of Jimmy was looking at hardcore pornography on the school's PC.
Yeah.
But in my experience, those filters never prevent Jimmy from looking at the hardcore pornography. They only stop Bimmy, Jimmy's slightly dumber brother, from doing it.
Right. It's
because
like,
I remember as a kid, it's weird, but we grew up, I was, computers were just starting to really appear in schools and we had internet access. And I remember I would quote unquote hack things like, oh, there's a public share with all the grades on them. Or, oh, if I just don't log in, suddenly there's no restrictions because the restriction scripts only kick off after I log in.
Yep.
So I was pretty much able to do whatever I wanted on the internet. And
Dude,
yet,
we could go to the Q Drive, and there was like a network admin program. You'd run it, and then you were the network admin for the whole town. Like, you could change the mayor's password. All you had to do was double-click on Q, and then double-click on this exe file. It was crazy. And the reason they expected you to not be able to do that was because you couldn't. Oh, they made it so there were no icons or anything to click on to do Windows Explorer. But if you pressed F3, you could get the Find Files dialog, and you just did a little search. And if any folders showed up in your search, so you search for Windows, obviously, you right-click on Windows and you click Explore, and then Explorer would open up.
Yep.
And it was really retarded.
Those were good old days. Now, the only filters that actually work, in my opinion, are straight-up whitelist filters.
Yeah, that's the one way that you'll have a filter that actually works is you can visit these things and no other things. So if you whitelist, Google.com and CNN.com, well, no one's going to see any porn because there isn't going to be porn on CNN.com and there isn't going to be porn on Google.com.
Nope, because I'm on Google, right? So I go to Google Images and there is amazing amounts of porn there.
But Safe Search is forced to be on.
How do I force that?
You can force that if you are on the proxy. The proxy can force it.
The proxy.
Which is what you'd be using anyway.
Even then,
right?
I do occasionally find porn with Safe Search on. I'm often looking for
Very rarely. See, the thing is with porn, right, is that it's actually somewhat, it's sort of a solved problem being able to detect porn technologically, right? It's like for other things like spam filtering, you need people to say that's spam, that's not spam. And with porn, we still sort of do that, right? People will go in Google's and be like, oh, that's porn. They mark it as porn or something like that. So that Google knows and learns what's porn and what's not. But really, porn sort of looks like something, right? It's like we have, face detection technology where we can find faces, in fact, specific people's faces in images, with computers. We can find dicks, too. Same stuff, right? We can find boobs. It's like you can just have a computer program look at tons and tons of images, and it can be like, boo, that one has a boob.
Now,
that one has
what's
a penis,
interesting? Think
that one
about
has a
what
butt,
that does. So
that one has a vagina.
That'll basically filter out an increasingly wide swath of the middle of the porn curve, the most generic vanilla porn, leaving only the extremes that don't show up in the filter.
No, it's actually, the thing is there's so much porn on the
Scott,
internet,
I just
even
wanna point
extreme
out-
porn gets filtered.
No, I mean, the extreme fetishes, though, like pedal pushing, is it really going to find...
But that's, that's not porn.
So what's the definition of porn?
Well, we're not talking about that. We're talking about the filtering part,
So
not the
why do
porn
we filter
part.
then? I mean, I guess this is a question we can't answer because I don't understand why, when the adults are involved, we actually have to filter it? Why does so many businesses have to filter?
Yeah,
because
I mean,
so many
if-
people are trying to see porn all the time.
Like if I was a company, right? I mean, I refuse to work anywhere that has filtering.
My
right?
company has no filtering. The hospital I worked at had crazy filtering.
Right.
It was a giant
but
pain in the ass.
if I was a company and I had a lot of employees, not just a few people I know, I wouldn't have filtering, but I would have monitoring of the office network, right? And it's like, I'm willing to tolerate at work, on the office network, monitoring. Even on a work computer, even, you could put the monitoring on the work computer because I don't do non-work on the work computer. I have complete separation, which is how it should be. And it's like, well, this doesn't belong to me, so they have a right to know how it's being used. It's their resources that they're paying for. They should be able to know if I visited porn. And if they want to go and look and say, oh, you visited porn, you're fired, that's totally cool. In fact, that's what I would do. If I had the company, I would monitor anyone who got caught visiting the porn. It's like, well, we wouldn't filter it because that filtering might also have false positives that make it harder for people to do their jobs, especially technological jobs, and it would slow the network down, and it would cost us money paying for this proprietary filtering package that we had to buy and whatever. But I still monitor you, and that should be enough, right? I saw that you did it, you got caught, and now you're fired because you're looking at porn at work or using your work computer.
Though at the same
what else,
time,
and why can't, anyone else do the same thing? Why can't, I was at the court today. Why couldn't they just monitor? And if anyone looks at porn, then it detects that and then just kicks you off the network or something
but
like
isn't that almost a honeypot? Because they're going to look at porn. You're just going to weed out all the people who look at porn.
I didn't look at the porn.
They will.
So it's not. It would have made
masses will.
For
They'll just
example,
look at
I was
porn.
on Reddit at the court, right? And most of Reddit worked, and Imgur worked, which, funnily enough, has a lot of porn on it.
Mostly Digimon.
Right, but Quick Meme was filtered. And every time I tried to click on a Reddit link to Quick Meme, I would get the courts page, which I assume meant that it was filtered. It didn't actually say it was filtered, but that was what was going on. But it's like, okay, there must be porn on Quick Meme. It's in their blacklist or something, but what I was trying to look at specifically wasn't porn. It was some other image on Quick Meme, probably with a funny caption. And I looked at it just now because I went back to the link, and it was a funny caption on an Amish guy. And it's like, well, with monitoring, that wouldn't have been a problem. But with
No, because then they have to do human intervention, which costs money.
the porn filter costs money too.
Not nearly as much as a human going through stupid logs. I think a real better solution is you monitor usage, but you don't look at that. Like, it's just archived in case there's a problem. Like, say, you've got an employee who's not getting any fucking work done. Then, a month goes by, you look and see, oh, he does nothing but surf Reddit all day.
The thing is, I do not.
Or there's an HR complaint. Oh, look at all the hardcore porn he's been watching.
I guess. You could detect other things, though, like did a guy fill up his hard drive? Is he using too much bandwidth? And then if one of those alarms sort of goes off, right? Or you can sort of have a thing that sort of looks at images, and if it starts to see dicks in them, then an alarm would go off, and it would sort of say, hey, check out this
frankly,
guy. I'm
I don't
not
even
saying
care.
you shouldn't manually look at everything everyone does. That's crazy. You sort of have these alarms in the monitoring that say, here's some specific, suspicious activity. Take a look at this, and then you investigate those instances, and that's going to catch 99%.
So what about filtering that businesses use to block malicious sites because users are dumbasses and get Trojans all the time?
The computers should be locked down enough to where no one should be able to get that sort of thing on their computer.
Usually aren't, and those people will often do everything they can to get around that.
If anyone fucks with their computer, re-image that shit and be like, oh, that's it. That's all there is to it.
So what about filtering for bandwidth problems? Like, it's weird how more and more colleges, like, the idea of a college in any way filtering basic internet was crazy to me. When we went to college, like, that was ludicrous. Like,
It's
no one
weird.
did
Well,
that.
we went to RIT, which I'm pretty sure still has complete unfiltered internet.
Yeah,
and
but no,
static
most of the other
IPs.
people I know went to other colleges
Yeah,
and had the same experience.
non-technical places.
Yeah, non-tech colleges were the same.
Oh.
And now I'm seeing more and more reports of people who are like, there was even a Slashdot, like, Ask Slashdot, where the guy was like, yo, dog, my college filters everything. How do I get on the real internet?
Go to a different college.
Actually, it's weird how kind of old and conservative Slashdot's getting, because most of the comments were, you should be studying. You shouldn't have the right to free internet at college. That's bullshit.
What are you talking about? That's all college is
I
free
know.
internet. First thing I do, get in the door. Oh my God, OC3s.
Except now I have similarly fast connection through Fios.
Not like OC3s.
Well,
You forget exactly how fast it was.
it was mostly not because of the OC3s. It was because of the internet, too.
So
and
apparently,
because the only thing I was doing was
Right.
pirating stuff from other people. on the
apparently
internet, too.
there's an ISP in California that it's called it's the best ISP there is. You can get gigabit for $60 a month, but only in this one area where they have fiber and such.
Let's move there.
You can apparently, when you click on a YouTube video, the entire video buffers instantly. Click, boom. There's 100% buffer before you
Scott,
can even
you
see
said
the
that
thing
the
moving.
way kids usually say made-up myths in video games. I heard that
that's
there's
what
a
they-
place
that's what they
outside
say.
of Canaria where if you walk in a circle 1,000 times, Ares comes back to life and
That's
kills
what they say.
Lincoln.
They say the YouTube videos, even at 1080p, buffer instantly, 100%.
I guess it depends on the video. I uploaded a video recently that was 18 gigabytes.
I'm sure.
So it would take 18 gigabytes divided by 1,000 gigabits per second.
The speed test.
Seconds.
The speedtest.net JPEGs from these people are hundreds of megabytes per second download. It's crazy. Anyway.
All right, so what about non-porn filtering? Because one thing I remember in my high school and my middle school especially was that they blocked anything that was even remotely controversial to anyone. And furthermore, I've seen a lot of articles talking about how schools are more and more blocking Wikipedia to prevent people from using it as a reference.
It's not going to prevent anyone from using it as a reference because they'll just go home and use it as a reference.
So, should schools block content that isn't pornographic or straight up illegal?
I think that
I
think it actually should be illegal to do that.
Do they have a right to is another question.
I think it should actually be illegal to do that. That's like banning books. It's you can't do that. It's the same thing. What's the difference between blocking Wikipedia and banning a book from the library?
Well, they ban books all the time.
You shouldn't.
Yeah, but they do. They have a right to.
No, you don't.
Yeah, they do.
No, you can't ban books.
Schools just
Freedom of
ban books all the
speech.
time. It's not freedom of speech for a school to say, yeah, we're not going to carry this book. I disagree.
Yeah, but it's if a kid brings the book to school, then that's okay,
Usually.
right?
But then again, all right, so the kid brings Hustler to school.
All right.
So it's probably going to get taken away.
Is he making a distraction in the classroom?
Well, apparently he's gonna, because if everyone just looks at porn the first chance they get.
Well, then it's a distraction in the classroom. It doesn't matter whether it's porn or whether it's a really cool pencil with ponies on it. It's a distraction in the classroom, right? I mean, that's pretty much all it comes down to.
So how about parents? I keep asking,
I mean, I think the
these
fundamental
questions.
thing here, right, is that why I'm in favor of monitoring when necessary, but not filtering.
Yep.
Is that filtering is sort of like this pre-justice, right? It comes in beforehand and punishes before you did anything. Whereas monitoring is it's fair justice. It's we watch, and if you do something bad and you get caught, then we punish you,
Wait
which
a
is
minute,
totally
Scott.
legit.
You've just independently derived the way free speech works in the U.S.
Oh no, did I?
That's how we did it.
That's how we do it.
Huh. Funny.
Yeah.
So what about, because it's interesting how rapidly things changed. When we were kids, there was no internet. There was nothing I could do. And then Prodigy was a walled garden. There was nothing. I mean, I hung out with weird people
Well,
there,
the
but-
later Prodigy had webs. And email part wasn't a walled garden. It was real emails.
Yeah, but there weren't any people to really email. You'd have to go out of your way to get into trouble in those places. You had to really be looking for it. But
I'm sure you could get some guy to email you some prawns that was mad pixelated.
yeah, but bandwidth was,
Or
also
some
a problem.
pixelated ass DOS prawn game. They existed.
So anyway, we grew up in an era where you didn't really, there wasn't a lot of filtering, partly because the tech-savvy kids, were different. Everything was weird. Now, does it even make sense, for example, a parent? Should a parent give a kid a smartphone? And if so, should they try to filter it independent of any other PC?
Well, I think there is one thing that you definitely have to filter if you give a kid a smartphone.
The ability to buy things?
Yeah, it's the ability to spend money, right? Unless the kid is spending his own goddamn money, you can't just give your kid, no matter how responsible they are, the ability to just spend all your freaking money.
No, I disagree. If the kid
you're
is
gonna
responsible, you could, because he's not gonna.
I mean, yeah, you could, do the monitoring thing. Oh, you spent all the money. Now you're in trouble. But
Scott, when I was a
you
little
can't
kid-
get the money back. So it's you're taking a risk, there.
When I was a little kid, I had my parents' credit card numbers in case I ever needed them.
Yeah, I guess. If you
I would just buy stuff online with their credit card, and I'd just be like, Mom, I bought this hard drive.
And they didn't care?
No, they told me to.
Oh, we didn't have that kind of monies. If I would have spent monies like that.
Oh, we didn't have it either. It's just if I was getting I'd be like, hey, I'm gonna buy a thing. I didn't go buy a Ferrari. I didn't go buy a laptop.
Yeah, I spent my own monies. I had to earn the monies before I could spend it.
Oh, it was my money. It's just I needed a credit card to buy stuff online. I have to pay my parents back.
Yeah, I would pay him back, sure.
But I
wouldn't.
had the credit card number. There was nothing to stop me from buying the Ferrari other than, I guess, the credit limit.
You can't buy a Ferrari online with a credit card. I just hate to tell you that. You can't even do that now.
So is there any value, though, in trying to filter content for little kids? You know, like the 4-year-old who's just going to be online because...
The thing is, I don't even think the 4-year-olds are going to look... They're not going to come across it, right? It's like, what are they going to do? They're going to turn the phone on, and they're going to see ponies or something. That's what they're going to touch, and then they're going to mess with that. They're not even going to try... They're not going to type in porn.
So there was just an article on Slashdot talking about how, and this is we've known this for a while, you know, Slashdot's just late, about how there's a huge trend in targeting children for malware and data mining by making children-centric games and websites that just collect data and then do bullshit.
Well, you know, if you keep your kid from spending your money on apps and stuff like that and installing apps and whatever, then, you know, you give him a nice restricted account on Windows and such, and only then... You know, he's not going to be able to install, you know, then it's the adult's fault for installing something that looked like a kid's app, but it was actually shady malware.
But is there any value in just content filtering for kids? Is there any value?
See, this is just one of those situations, right, where it's the lazy parent, right? It's like they want to sort of feel like they're a good parent, and they think that keeping things out of their kid's vision is making them a better parent, but they don't want to work too hard at it and actually, you know, be there with their kids. You know, they're like, oh, just use the, you know, they want to be able to go and, you know, drink wine secretly in the pantry and just chill out and let the kid do whatever he's going to do without supervising him, even though they're really small.
Well, I guess what's interesting is
they want a filter on there so they don't have to sit there.
There was a really good kind of way around that disappeared with the advent of tablets and laptops and smartphones and everything. That, you know, back in the day, the family had one computer hooked up to a modem, so it was probably in the kitchen. Because not everyone had a den. Maybe it was in the den.
It doesn't matter. It's in a public space. It's not in someone's bedroom.
So the kid would be there, and the parents would kind of just always be around. Of course, I remember the first thing I typed when I had access to the internet was literally I typed the words bomb-making instructions in front of my entire extended family and hit enter, and bomb-making instructions came up, and my dad was like, I figured. And my mom was like, don't hurt yourself.
Well, that's because our families aren't, you know.
But I guess, is there value in that? Should we fault a parent who installs some filtering for their kid, or do we take the radical techno-progressivist?
The thing is, I mean, it's like
this is a future where information is so available that it's impossible to filter, and all you can do is provide context.
Yeah, it's like you can if you want, and it might, you know, delay the kid finding the prawn, but it's sort of like the story of the kids with the toy guns, right? It's like, you know, you would go to one kid's house, and there's tons of plastic guns everywhere. And then some kid visits, and his mom doesn't, you know, his parents don't let him have any toy guns. And when that kid shows up at the house, he's like, oh my God, toy guns. He's going crazy over the toy guns. Because they're banned, he becomes fascinated with them. And they're just like, oh my God, it's the best thing ever. Whereas if they're just all over the place, the kids are like, yeah, toy guns, whatever. What's your problem, right? And it's sort of the same thing. If you put up this big banning thing and your kid notices like that there's something you're hiding from him, he's going to be mad curious and want to find whatever that is.
I am not confident that any parent...
I would bet that a kid would find porn faster if there was blocking installed than if there wasn't. He just wouldn't have any curiosity to find the porn, and it'd be longer until he found it by accident.
I'm not even confident.
But if there was a blocking, if there was some sort of software preventing him, he would notice, as soon as he noticed that blocking software, he would do every effort to find the prawns and find it because the blocking software isn't perfect.
Parent in the history of the world who would be able to outsmart their kids when it comes to blocking content on a computer.
Even me. I wouldn't. If I had kids, I wouldn't be able to prevent them if they really, you know, it's impossible.
I mean, I already don't understand Homestuck, so I guess I'm already getting old.
Right. But, you know, I sort of feel like, you know, in general, parenting, right? It's like, what's even wrong if a kid sees porn? What's the problem?
Well, maybe that's it. I guess.
But even if there is a problem, it's like, well, look, no amount of blocking is really going to prevent it. So really, it's sort of the same, my same feeling on privacy. It's like, look, you can't keep your information secret. It'll be impossible.
Well, this is it.
So just give in to the fact that it's
of any kind only work in a walled garden. Now, in a place like China, it works because they made the whole thing one gigantic walled garden.
But it's like, just give in to the fact that it's impossible to block, and instead, your best bet is to have some other strategy, which is Raise a kid who's not going to become one of those people who looks at porn in the freaking courthouse, right? Raise a kid who's only going to look at porn when appropriate or not at all.
This has been Geek Nights with Rim and Scott. Special thanks to DJ Pretzel for the opening music, Kat Lee for web design, and Brando K for the logos.
Be sure to visit our website at frontrowcrew.com for show notes, discussion, news, and more.
Remember, Geek Nights is not one, but 4 different shows. Sci-Tech Mondays, Gaming Tuesdays, Anime Comic Wednesdays, and Indiscriminate Thursdays.
Geeknights is distributed under a Creative Commons Attribution 3.0 license. Geeknights is recorded live with no studio and no audience. But unlike those other late shows, it's actually recorded at night.